Hi, I'm Kat Curry-Williams.
And I'm Robin Radin.
And this is Wine, Women, and Chocolate.
And today we have some very exciting guests.
And you're going to tell them Steve Porcaro.
Yes.
And Tara, because Tara's last name I always mess up on. So I was hoping you were going to say it. And
I didn't. Tara, tell everyone your full name.
Oh, actually, my first name is pronounced Tara.
Oh.
Sorry, that's okay, but it's Tara Branham.
Oh, Tara Branham. See, that is what happens when you're not drinking wine. So I really feel like wine adds to helping you get, because you're more sensitive to paying attention to things. But today's a special episode because we're going to talk about chocolate.
Yes, we are.
So we're going to start with the Godiva. Well, I'm just going to pass this around because usually we toast. Mm-hmm. So if you can't, you start at the very beginning. Your favorite.
Let me take a heart.
While they're taking a piece of chocolate, let's let our audience know, because we are an audio and visual podcast. Let's let our audience know a little bit about our guests, because Steve, you are a founding member of Toto, and it's really fascinating how that came to be. And I always like to start at the beginning. I'm a pretty linear person. So you grew up in a very musical family.
I did.
And your father was a jazz drummer, is that right?
He was, and a studio musician, studio percussionist.
And so he started out giving you a set of drums or plopping you down on a drum set, or how did it all begin?
There was just always drums around the house. You know, my dad was a jazz drummer where we grew up in Connecticut, and there was always drums around the house. So we all kind of took turns bashing away at some point.
I bet you your friends were very jealous because in my neighborhood, if no one was allowed to have drums because you kept everybody away in Brooklyn, New York. So it's like, do you have drums? You can't move next door to us.
Yeah.
But
were they in the garage? Were they in the basement?
Originally in the living room, but then in the basement. The basement was the place to hang.
And it was you and two brothers.
My brothers, and I have a younger sister too.
Oh, your poor younger sister didn't seem to really get a whole lot of press, though, because everything I read was about you and your brothers and you and your brothers.
Yeah.
And are you the oldest?
I'm not. I'm the youngest brother.
The youngest. Okay.
It was Jeff and then Mike.
Jeff,
and then
Mike,
me.
and then you, and then your sister, Jolene. And then when did you all come to Los Angeles?
We came out in 1966, just as I was turning 9 years old. And it was quite the culture shock. It was amazing, an amazing time. You'd see the monkeys driving by in their monkey mobile there in Burbank, and I saw kids smoking, and it just was that 9-year kind of awakening at the same time as just my eyes were just bugged wide open with.
What part of Los Angeles did you move to?
It was Burbank first.
So you were,
for
right.
the first year. It was Burbank, and then Studio City for a couple of years, and then Sherman Oaks is where we really settled down, right around this neck of the woods here.
Oh, yeah.
That's so, I can't even imagine, like, growing up in the Valley at that time when it was just sort of, almost like the Brady Bunch era.
Specifically, he was going after being a studio musician, working mostly in film.
Was he in the Wrecking Crew?
He is mentioned on the Wrecking Crew documentary. He is mentioned at the end. Getting here in '66, he was kind of the tail end of those guys. He does get an honorable mention. He did do a lot of records at first when he was here, and all those guys were all his friends. And so
that's the studio musicians that I know of. I came here in '77, and it was such a fascinating, fantastic time.
It was an amazing time. It was an amazing time. He did a lot of records when we first got here, but then he really gravitated to doing film stuff. Working with composers, and he did real well, real quick.
But you gravitated away from the drums pretty quickly. Yes,
I did. He got a piano. We got a piano when I was like 4 years old, and I gravitated to that. And I was a horrible student, but I just never gave up. My dad had a lot of friends that would want to barter with him. He was a real good drum teacher, so he'd get a lot of fellow student musicians who wanted him to teach their kid. And a a lot of times they were piano players, and I would get to take lessons from them.
Yeah.
Were
So it
any
was
of them
great.
teachers that you could barter a grade for? Just saying. That's where I'm going, this little Brooklyn girl. Just goes like, could you get an A if he teaches my son to
Right.
No.
And your
No, but they were
brothers
great.
and your brothers went to all three of you went to different
Well, my brother Jeff
instruments.
stayed on drums.
Yeah.
And then my brother Mike, right after the Beatles were out, he got a guitar, and that kind of led to bass. And,
How lucky though that all three of you would gravitate towards different instruments to say like, well, we
Yeah.
can be a band.
Right.
I mean, instead of you all wanting to do the drums, and then you can't really have a band
Exactly.
with three drummers.
Exactly.
I mean,
and all
I guess
that
you
talent
could, but
is reading music for, okay, here's the dumb question. Oh, here's the dumb question portion of the reading music for all of the instruments. Are they the same? I mean, I played the flute for a little while because I wasn't, and I don't ever remember if I knew how to read the music. I don't know how I even cheated at that.
There's certain things that are similar, the rhythms and all that, but there's different clefs for the bass, and the piano reads two clefs, and it's a little bit different.
So when your dad, did he teach you music, or that you all had to pick up on your own for your own instruments?
We all studied pretty hard and stuff. And he, all through his life, because he was a studio musician, he had to be able to sight read. When you're doing movies,
Right then.
you've got to play it right real quick. So he was always practicing his sight reading, being able to play it right real fast.
It was a good example of practice. Like he was a good inspiration of that.
He had an amazing work ethic that unfortunately didn't rub off on me whatsoever.
That's not true. That's not true. But
We can
find
say
that hard
that
to
about
believe.
ourselves, but we never can say that about our husbands or our boyfriends or sisters.
what was your first experience professionally in the music world?
I was playing school dances right around here, but professionally, I right out of high school, or I actually wasn't finished with high school yet, and Gary Wright had just released his Dreamweaver album, and I got to go on tour with him when I was 17. And it was great, because we got to play these big concerts. And
What was that like as a 17-year-old?
it was a dream come true, seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was living the dream right away.
So you're out there with Gary Wright, and are you just thinking like this is it, the dream is achieved, or were you thinking like, okay, this is the beginning?
It was the beginning. I mean, it was it was an incredible start, and it was really, really fun. It was a blast. But I was always looking down the line of what was next, and we always wanted to do our own thing.
You and your brothers.
Eventually.
Yeah.
And so then you just said, let's make a band?
Well, my brother Jeff was very established in the studio as a drummer, and him and his high school buddy David Page, this keyboard player, had just done a big album for Boss Gax called Silk Degrees. Yeah. It had the hits Lowdown on it,
Right.
and Lido Shuffle.
Oh yeah, my husband's the Lido Shuffle. Because you played on. Did you play it on the Lido Shuffle?
Because I went from Boss Gax. I went from Gary Wright to playing with Boss Gax
Yes.
live, doing that Silk Degrees tour, and then the record company just kind of saw this group of guys. My friend from high school, Steve Lukather, was playing guitar with Boz. My brother Jeff, David Page, and David Hungate, the bass player, were the guys who did Silk Degrees. So the record company saw, and David co-wrote all the songs with Boz Scaggs. So they kind of saw this self-contained band there, and we just got our own lead singer, called it Toto. And
Who came up with Toto?
it was never supposed to be Toto. There were bands called, there was U2 and In Excess, and we just wanted something simple with just a couple letters. So all having grown up watching The Wizard of Oz, we loved The Wizard of Oz, all of us. So we just started putting Toto on the cassettes, like we want something simple like that. It was never, ever going to be called Toto.
And it just
But sure enough, next thing I know, I'm looking at an album cover that says Toto.
Hey, I love that. A very organic way of happening.
It's like, we'll just call it Toto for now until we come up with a name.
Something simple like
Something
that.
simple
Just a couple
like that.
letters, In Excess, U2. We liked how simple those names were,
And then it just stuck.
It just stuck.
How crazy.
You're my neighbor. And
Yes.
that's very exciting because when we built our house right across the street, we built a 2-story house in the neighborhood that was mostly 1-story houses, and the neighbors sneered at us.
Were you one of the sneerers?
Absolutely.
And really, my husband said he was the most gracious neighbor. I forgot what you said, but you did say something like, you just raised the value of our neighborhood or something like that to my husband, like something nice.
Absolutely.
And then Scott just said, oh my God, as he worked out, that's Steve Porcaro. Toto, because my husband's a big music fan, and so it didn't matter that the rest of the neighbors said that,
Right,
what is that McMansion? Which wasn't a McMansion, it's a Cape Cod style home.
It's a gorgeous home.
And yeah, it's a very
And that's similar to
Tasteful
Brian's
and-
reaction when I said that we were interviewing Steve Porcaro today.
Oh, yes.
Yes, he sort of had a little. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's been great to be your neighbor. It's been great to when Tara came into your life. I was and
Tara, like a New Yorker.
Tara. I don't know what I was thinking. I have that Brooklyn.
That's okay.
You have trouble with the last name. I have trouble with the first name.
Yeah, both names. You've got
I'm going to call you Tara.
Tara.
It is very true. I've been so trying to be so correct for the last 30 years of my life. I should just let it all go.
Right,
Tara.
right, yeah.
Now I even like you better. But during the pandemic, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my daughter Mickey at one point, a couple months after we were together, came up to me and said, Dad, is it Tara or Tara? I said, I don't know. What you asked. Find out.
That's right.
Find out, let me know.
And we have kids approximately the same age, and one day my daughter calls me and says, I'm like, where are you? She was at a party, and then we were on Find My Friends, and we're like, where are you? Because it looked like she was like at our house, he's right across the street from us. It was like, oh, I'm at what's her son's name? Dominic's house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at Steve's house across the street. We're like, you're at a party. Does his dad know he's having a party? Which he didn't, I think. Many times that had happened with her son, but they have mutual friends, and so it's been a great relationship because we have some cameras on our house, and occasionally when we're out of town, we're like, what are those police cars doing there? Oh,
We better call Steve.
we better call Steve. And a couple, right? We have called Steve, and then we trust that because, certainly in the pandemic, we don't go anywhere. We only see each other in our pajamas, and
Right.
and Tara and I have said we've got our little dogs. We like our
Yes,
little
we do.
dogs,
Yes.
and I was like, Tara, do you like wine? She's like, yes, and she's like, Steve likes chocolate, and I like wine. I'm like, oh, you're going to be on our podcast. We will talk wine. We've been supposed to meet, even though it's embarrassing if I have wine at 9 or 10 in the morning when we see each other outside with our dog. So
I wouldn't judge you.
I still have more questions because
You do.
I'm the journalist.
That's
so
right.
I had to get some
but I'm
questions. for you.
snackish with all this chocolate around
pass
us.
out some chocolates.
That's
because-
right. You have water. So
and I
how
hope you don't mind, Steve, that I have some questions about your career.
do we want? Well, I'm going to pass off the next. This is from in Solvang area. We have a
yes.
house, and these malted balls, but we're kind of judging them against Whoppers, and I
I
can't
want
say.
to try one of these.
Yeah, me
Yes.
too.
And
Try it.
you must take those home after because this is not the first bag I've had.
These have a little gluten in them, but it's okay.
They do.
Yeah, all right.
So this is the interstitial moment where we all go. Because the Whopper, I usually like to melt in my mouth.
So while you're all chewing, I'll ask this question in a very long-winded way. Okay, so your most successful
Did you finish
album
your
was Toto 4.
I'll take some wine.
Now, what I read was that you didn't even think that
Thanks.
Africa should go on the album.
It's true.
Was it the last song on the B-side?
And who puts the last song on the B-side?
Right.
They're what wound up being our only number one single.
glass?
Carry
on.
And then it was that and Roseanna were the two most successful songs on the album. And by the way, and now Africa is like, it's back again. It was like 10 years. It was, 5-6 years ago, something like that, when Weezer redid the song, which I can't even tell when it starts. I'm like, wait, is this the Weezer version? Is it the Toto version? It takes me a minute.
Sure. Better.
But how did that feel for you when the song was re-released and it found a popularity in a whole new generation?
It's been amazing. It's been real good for the band because it's all of a sudden, all this time later, it's like when we were touring, it was like having a hit single out.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You know what I mean? You're usually used to playing your old ones, but so it's been fantastic. For the band.
And then didn't you switch it with Weezer? Yes. Okay. We were busy drinking wine back here, and so, because my daughter goes to those Weezer concerts. So so everything.
And then you released, or Toto, the newfound Toto released a Weezer song?
Yeah, well, we'd been touring, and Weezer did two of ours. So they did Roseanna and Africa.
Wow.
And Luke was out of town on the road with Ringo, and I was kind of waiting for him to come back and said, hey, they've done two of ours. Why don't we do one of theirs? And so I got together with our singer, Joseph Williams, and we picked
How
out Hashtag.
fun.
Yeah.
Wasn't it fun? And
And Scott, when Scott found out I was doing a Weezer thing, he knocked me over.
Right, I think he
couldn't
just
wait to hear it.
went right over to your house, and I think you might have played some of the stuff before. Scott's like, oh my God, I just got to hear it. It's like, I love that. And my daughter loves, it's so great too, because it's like, first of all, the generations get to share. She likes it all because Scott's a music guy, so I'm sure like your kids, they get to, or do they rebel about music now and don't like the oldies, or do they, when I say oldies, did I say?
It's funny.
You know what I'm saying,
I used to drive my son Dominic to school, and we would listen to Alt Nation. We listened to this kind of alternative rock nation.
We love Alt Nation.
And I thought, isn't this cool? I get to share music with my son. We have similar taste, and how great that we can agree about music. Well, then when his friends were over one time, I walk in and it's hardcore rap, you know what I mean? And I realized, that they definitely have their own music. And I think they kind of got to, every generation has to have some music that pisses their parents off.
My 12-year-old has found this love of things like Never Gonna Give You Up seems to be back, and Smash Mouth is back. And I'm like, what are you listening to? And he's calling it, oldies.
Right.
We
like we're playing Glenn Miller, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
We don't get a shot. We don't know anything. You could be as famous as, Ringo Starr. Oh, right, him.
Right.
But one thing that I think a lot of people don't know about you is you had a whole second part of your career, which was with composing and writing music for other people. And probably most famously would be for Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
all of us in the band were all kind of, even before the band was together, we're doing a lot of studio work. We all were, that's what we always aspired to do. It wasn't really...
Like your dad.
Yeah. Especially records, though. We really aspired. Those were really, most of our heroes were, a lot of our heroes were studio musicians, and that's what we all aspired to do. And we all were able to do that. We all got lucky and were able to do that. And,
or talented, or...
Anyway,
all of the above is,
Yeah, I'd worked with Michael and Quincy before, and they happened to hear a tune of mine. It was just in demo form. It was very rough and wasn't finished. I never would have played it for him on purpose because it was incomplete. But Quincy heard it and loved the vibe of it, and.
It was a cute little story, not a cute little story, like cute little story goes to Michael Jackson, but it wasn't supposed to be heard or something?
Yeah, no, it was kind of, he heard it accidentally, but it was just one of those real serendipitous things. And
so we need to get into, though, Tara.
Oh, look, we're all going to have a New York accent now.
Tara. I'm from New York, and you're from New York, and so you would have always been Tara to me.
Okay, great.
Tara, you're Tara to me.
You'd always be Tara to me. Sarah, Tara. It's like Mary or Mary or whatever. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. But Tara, tell us about how you two met.
We met, boy, a while ago. We met probably in like 2006, we think. This is my first. This is my first experience meeting Steve. I don't know who he is. My brother-in-law's brother wrote the book Rock Snob's Dictionary, and they did a book premiere in Beverly Hills, right, just above Sunset, in this big garish house. And so I just happened to walk into the dining room, and Steve's the only person in there. I don't know who he is. He literally took my breath away. And I don't have that kind of response to men. I'm usually like, what do you got? But no,
well, because
I walked
look at you. You take their breath away.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So I walk in, and I was like, and he was the only one in there, and I said hi, and you said hi. Thank God my brother-in-law was behind me, and he said, you know Steve? And I said, no. Inside I'm, what it feels like is coming out is I'm going, no, I don't, but I think I remained pretty cool, and I said, no, I don't know him. And Steve said, oh, he's Dominic's dad. And my niece, Ted, my brother-in-law, his daughter, Charlotte, and Dominic were in Little Birds together, pre-kindergarten.
Our kids, they get us such good...
Right?
And so I was just like, married.
Married as a kid. That seems to follow suit, but
So that backed off. And not that I was even coming on to Steve or anything. I never had that kind of reaction to anybody. So then we would occasionally run into each other. I was at that point living like a mile where we live now together by the house, and so we would see each other at Fashion Square Mall. We would see each other at Arts Deli. And one time, Steve, I was just broke, and my sister wanted to go out for breakfast, and it was her and her two daughters, and God love them, those two little girls ate like men. And so so we would always split the bill, and I was just broke and like worried, like this is going to cost me $60 that I just don't have. I was just really worried about it. We ran into Steve and his ex-wife, the kids and your parents at Arts, and Steve bought our breakfast. I was so grateful. I was just so grateful. It was just one of those, talk about grace.
Yeah.
One of those graces, these tender mercies that come into your life.
I love that.
So it was really wonderful. And then, we would see each other. I knew that Steve and his ex-wife had divorced, and I moved to Michigan.
She couldn't have him, so she moved to Michigan.
Exactly.
Took to breakfast and didn't want to push any further from there.
Right.
Up to Michigan, I guess.
Yeah, that was it. So I moved back to Michigan with no intention of ever moving back here. And I was in town in 2018. I went to Arts Deli with a friend of mine, and I was saying to him, the last time I was here, Steve Porcaro bought my breakfast. We are walking out, and Steve Porcaro walked in.
What?
Yep.
That makes my hair.
Oh God, it gives me goosebumps. It happened to me
because that's just
talk about serendipity.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
And you said, "Where's your wife?"
Oh no, I knew because my sister and Pam, Steve's ex-wife, have remained friends throughout the years. So I knew that they had been divorced. I knew that. So. So yeah, it was one of those moments.
But she didn't know where he was at this stage in the game because, he's a handsome, maybe eligible bachelor. I don't know. I see him in his robe all the time. Is that how eligible? How much did he want to go out? But it's an adorable robe, and it's early in the morning, and he still gets the newspaper. Can I share?
Sure.
Which is just so endearing.
Right.
Because there's something about it. It's so great.
That's a great story, though. It really is. I love that. And so it was like you knew each other for years, almost like when Harry met Sally.
Right, and that we consider that our anniversary because from that day on, I had to go back to Michigan. I wasn't living here. I
was vacationing, and you didn't.
I was just visiting.
Hello.
I was visiting my sister. I was here for other reasons as well. But Steve and I just started texting each other, and he asked me. Well, we always laugh about this because it was so sweet. He said, "Well, how long are you in town for? I'd love to take you out." And I said, "Oh shoot, I leave tomorrow morning." And he wrote back, "Shoot is right." And then I was like, "Okay." This is going to
I use the poop emoji a lot of times because I'll say crap or I'll use a bit of shoot, same thing.
Same.
Damn.
So we never stopped communicating. Mm-hmm. And then Steve came to Michigan, and we had never really spent longer than about 5 minutes together, but we took a big leap, and Steve came to visit me, and he was making a joke about, I knew he was funny because we would talk on the phone and he would make me laugh. But he was telling the story about growing up, on the East Coast, and his cousin Vinny, his cousin Vinny. Was talking about this, like going to an Italian restaurant, and the waiter is always looking behind his back and, explaining the meal, and he was like, and we got the pasta tucked under the shrimp, and he just did it so hysterically that in that moment I went, uh-oh. Like, this is not, I'm going to fall in love with this person. I knew, because he made me laugh. And I knew he had like this physicality that it just melted me. Absolutely melted me.
Yeah,
and then when did you move out? When did you end up moving to Los Angeles?
It was a year and a half later. Yep. We moved in together. I didn't just move here. I moved in with him.
And she has an adorable dog.
I do have a great dog.
Yes.
I adore that dog.
And what are you doing? I know you're doing things these days of writing with your sister.
I am, yeah. We met yesterday, and we both wrote our one-woman shows. This is years ago now. I'm talking like 10 years ago. I stopped performing my show. So I want to, we're getting back to it. We don't know and we don't write together. We just hold each other accountable. We write separately, whatever we want to do. Neither one of us knows what this is going to look like. Are we going to do shows? Is it going to be a narrative? Is it going to be short story? We don't know. Neither of us know. But it's how we both write. If you write a show, you don't tell the story narratively. You tell the story through character and through dialogue. And so that's how I write. So it's going to at least be how it begins.
We want to hear so much more about what you're doing, so we're going to do another episode with them.
I just say we got to continue, but we're going to have a little more wine in the next episode. Okay. So, Steve, you don't mind hanging out with us while we...
I'd love to.
You'd love to. And there's plenty of chocolate to eat on the...
I'll be fine.
Okay, well...
And with that...
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
1016 Entertainment.